Hey, look who it is. Your boys, Mike Augello and Norm James. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It is Sunday, March 20th, 2022. We are a day away from the NHL trade deadline, and we're excited. Mike, you got to admit, man, this is probably the toughest spot Kyle Dubas has ever been in terms of his NHL managerial career, because if he doesn't do something to at least attempt to improve this team, he's going to look like he doesn't give a shit. If he does too much or does the wrong thing, he may push this organization and its overall development, its overall progression back to a degree that it may have difficulty overcoming. Good morning, Mr. Augello. We're on the eve of the trade deadline.
Yes, good morning, Norm. And yeah, this is always my favorite time of the year. Although at 3:01, I know a lot of Leaf fans are sort of crestfallen when the Leafs haven't made 7 trades to bring in Wayne Gretzky, and what I'm saying. It's I mean, there's expectation there, and then there's sort of like sort of depression.
Stavros just ixnayed that trade, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. So realistically, and then we can only look at it right now in the window of what the teams that are in direct competition with the Leafs have done up until Sunday morning. And their 3 main competitors in the Atlantic Division have all made significant moves. Florida has traded draft picks and prospects to Montreal to bolster their blue line by bringing in Ben Sherratt. And then yesterday they traded more draft picks and more prospects to get Claude Giroux from Philadelphia. So they're all in. Boston, as Boston is wont to do, made a trade to acquire Hampus Lindholm from Anaheim and then get him signed on a very economical deal. Because Boston always gets their players to take a little bit less. So they've upgraded their blue line. And now Tampa, they a couple days ago made a trade where they essentially traded their draft picks until the apocalypse, along with 2 prospects to Chicago for Brandon Hagel. The Leafs apparently were involved in those talks, and it potentially involved Marc-Andre Fleury. Darren Drager reported it didn't get to the point where they were going to ask Fleury whether he would go to Toronto, but that it was bandied about that they were going to get Hagel and get Fleury, but the cost. Now, I don't know if Toronto turned it down or if Tampa Bay's offer was better. Probably, I think Tampa Bay's was better because Kyle Dubas doesn't want to give up multiple first-round picks after trading first-round picks over the last couple of years. But Tampa Bay's in a situation where they've won 2 in a row. They'd like to win 3 or 4 in a row, and their window is small with Stamkos and Hedman and Kucherov and Vasilevsky, and that's the type of deal that they can do. I have to say that. I mean, we don't know what Kyle Dubas is going to do between now and 3 p.m. on Monday. But based on what everybody else in the division has done, you would think that he would have to pull the trigger on something of significance. But I will say this. Based on the way the Leafs have played for over a month, based on their goaltending situation, based on, in part, maybe where Kyle Dubas is in terms of his security as general manager. If he's not fearful of losing his job, then he might say, well, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to mortgage the future when Tampa and Florida and maybe even Boston are stronger than me. And maybe I'll make tinkering moves, but I won't, mortgage the future for those types of deals. So we will see maybe how tenuous his position is before 3 p.m. on Monday, because if he makes 2 or 3 moves, then he's sort of singing for his supper.
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. New vehicles rolling in. Our pre-owned stock is slowly increasing. Get at me, the Leafs Convo at gmail.com, or I am Norman James, or through community. If you need any help finding your next vehicle, you know I'm here to do that for you. OGs, converts especially, I appreciate all of the activity within the community, all of the support for this project. It means a great deal. Chris Daniels, it's going to be really depressing when we don't get a goalie. He also made another comment here. Honestly, I wouldn't do much considering the crazy costs of trades that the trades have been in terms of overall cost so far. The thing is, Mike, that's the thing, right? Nobody's going to just set the table for Kyle Dubas to completely take everything they've got for a much smaller return. Not only do the Leafs have to pay to get, they are the Maple Leafs, and other teams know that the Leafs are in a vulnerable position right now. And you just laid out why Kyle Dubas, if he wanted to make a deal, is at a position of disadvantage, or if he decides he doesn't want to make a deal, it's because overall, in the grand scheme of things, he may just be at too much of a position of disadvantage to do anything that will, that he strongly believes will bring back an immediate return, enough of a return that'll put this team in a position to win a Stanley Cup, right? It's a huge conundrum, really, really difficult. Then again, if he's looking long term, it feels like he has security. The next 24 hours for Leafs fans may turn out to be a little less, a little underwhelming, let's just say.
Well, I think that Dubas has done one thing I think was really wise, and that is use the media to sort of set the narrative in terms of what he's willing to pay for what. Like, okay, he's interested in rentals, but he's not interested in doing a repeat of last year and trading a first round pick and another draft pick to Columbus for a rental and Nick Foligno, who ends up going and signs with Boston. If he's trading a first round pick, he wants an asset that he can retain for a number of years.
Right.
Hence the Hagel trade. Hagel's making $1.5 million. So for teams that are up against the cap, he scored 21 goals this year. So for teams up against the cap, he is somebody that makes a lot of sense. He's having a good year. He may be a really good player going forward. It might be the Tampa move equivalent to Blake Coleman or Barclay Goodrow, where they traded first round picks for those guys. So it makes sense that he sets that price. I will trade my first, but only for somebody who's got term. But he also wants, if it's term, it's got to be somebody with a lower or reasonable salary. Otherwise, he's got to move money out. So I like, in terms of the defensive core, the only guy that sort of fits that, I mean, Chychrun, but I don't think that the Leafs are going to trade 3 or 4 pieces for Jacob Chychrun. Plus,
that's an overhaul.
Right.
That's an overhaul. And are the Leafs, is this the time to overhaul your team?
No, that's a summer deal, and most people think that that what Bill Armstrong in Arizona is doing is sort of setting, like he's holding talks with people about, okay, what do you want? What will you give me for Jacob Chychrun? And then he'll check back in the summer. There are some people who are seeing, okay, well, maybe we can get the deal done now, but I'm going to file this away in my mental Rolodex, and I'll go about it in June or July.
I deal with them all the time, Mike. Yeah, we'd like to come in and drive 4 or 5 cars today. We're doing our homework. We're buying next year.
Yeah, exactly. So
there may not be any cars next year.
Right, which you absolutely hate. You want them to jump. But anyway, so the only thing, so what he's also doing is, if there is a rental out there before 3 p.m. on Monday, that he's saying, okay, I'm interested, but I'm not trading you my first, or I'm not trading you Nick Abruzzese, or I'm not trading you Matthew Nyes, or Nick Robertson, or Topi Niemelä. I'm not trading you my best. I'll give you a second round pick and something. I'll fair value, but I'm not going to overpay. And the name that has come out there, and Elliot Friedman has mentioned it, and Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger have mentioned it, and CJ has mentioned it, has been Mark Giordano. And honestly, and I talked with Kevin Allen about this a couple days ago on the Buzzcast. And I saw Giordano last week, and Giordano can still play, but he's not Mark Giordano anymore. He's not the guy who won a Norris Trophy 3 or 4 years ago. He's not. Now, can he help the Leafs? Can he upgrade their defense? Absolutely. But this Mark Giordano is not worth a first-round pick and multiple prospects. So,
OG's conference, you have to know that, right? Like we get that. This isn't the Leafs of 20 plus years ago where Pat Quinn would bring a guy who's past his prime into the mix for name purposes, right? We were just looking to get name guys uh, after their best days were behind them to provide moral support. I feel like if Giordano comes in at this point, it's a morale boost. If if
well,
if if a few other things as well, maybe he'll be able to help guide some of the younger players and do a few things. But man, oh man, there's no way Mark Giordano at this stage of his career, and even if he was the top defenseman in the league, would be able to rally this team from a position of malaise all the way to
well,
to turning the corner and dethroning Tampa as the Stanley Cup champion. It would be a tall task in his heyday, Mike.
well. I mean, you flash back to the Pat Quinn days. I compared the potential of a Giordano deal to the deal that they made in 04 to get Brian Leetch. Now,
Right.
he wasn't the Brian Leetch that won a Stanley Cup in 94 or led the US to the World Cup victory in 96, but he was still a pretty damn good defenseman. And when he was partnered, I think it was with Brian McCabe in those playoffs, he played really well. I think Giordano, if they make a trade for him, would play really well here, would play really well in the top four. But they don't want to, or they really can't pay significant assets, especially young prospects that are in the pipeline that are close enough to being in the NHL that, and believe me, the Leafs absolutely positively need young prospects on their entry-level contracts over the next couple of years with the cap staying flat. They cannot trade those guys because they need them to play at a cheap enough price so they can bring in other players making more money. So that's the thing. I think he set the market. And they said on the broadcast last night, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks, even though I don't think this guy really is a difference maker, that if they can't get Giordano, that the fallback is probably a guy like Justin Braun with Philadelphia. The right-hand shot, veteran defenseman, can play in the top four. I don't think he's a top four defenseman. I think he's more of a bottom pairing guy. But if they're looking to sort of increase the veteran depth on the team, take a little bit of the heat off the Timothy Liljegren's, guys like that, or if another injury comes up,
Yeah.
it's the thing is, I'm based on what they're looking for right now. They're a little afraid of what if Jake Muzzin can stay healthy, and that's for obvious reasons because he hasn't been able to stay healthy all this year or in the playoffs the last few years. So, I think that they have fallback. Jacob Middleton is another name that I think we mentioned on the last show, where he's a San Jose defenseman making less than. I think he's making less than the veteran minimum this year, but he's had a really good year for the Sharks. But he's a low salary contract, and he's really sort of jumped up with them. I talked to somebody in San Jose and said, well, it's a lot of teams are interested in him because he's a low salary guy. It's not that San Jose is shopping him. So the price that they would ask for would be over the top. And the other name out there, and a Vancouver reporter mentioned it yesterday, and I think we've talked about this again, is Luke Shen. And again, it's more right-handed veteran depth. But these are, if short of Giordano, these are not like moves that are like, oh my God, this is going to move the Leafs into, but no, I don't think that there is a move out there that is going to propel the Leafs past Tampa or Florida or Boston. The only way that that's going to happen is Jack Campbell comes back and plays like the Jack Campbell of October and November, and all of a sudden they play like their hair on fire. Right now, the way this team has played over the last month, I see another first round elimination. And then nobody in Leaf Nation wants to hear that, but that might be the reality.
Well, we know William Nylander is going to have another all-world playoffs.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll drink to that.
Yes. The elephant in the room, and okay. I keep saying this. If my supposition is correct, if the Leafs lose in the first round again, and if Kyle Dubas does not get fired, what do? Okay, they're not trading Austin Matthews. Mitch Marner's having a career year. He might, he could, if he keeps up this pace, he could exceed 100 points, even though he
may even pass. It depends. He may even surpass Matthews for points, right? It's possible.
Very possibly, because he gets assists almost every time Matthews gets goals. If Marner doesn't beat out, doesn't get 100 points, and he missed some time, so that might be impossible. He could break the team record for most points by a right winger, which was Wilf Payma back in the 80s.
Number 99, baby. He was the 99 that no one wanted to talk about.
The only reason that popped into my head was because Wilf Payma was at the Leaf game a couple days ago. Yeah. So, but
anybody have a Wilf Payma card? I have a few peachy Wilf Payma cards, and he looked like he was either high or he had just had the shit kicked out of him,
or both,
or both. And the lighting at the Gardens always sucked. Anyway, go on.
But right now, and you can't trade John Tavares because he's got a no move clause. Where's your significant change?
Right.
Significant change is trading Nylander.
I know, but he's so good looking.
Yeah, and honestly, I should have never said that Nylander deserved to make the All-Star team, because as soon as he did, he stopped playing. He stopped playing consistently. The first half of the season he played well. And again, let me specify, folks, I'm not blaming everything that's gone wrong with this team on William Nylander. I'm not. I'm just saying that he was arguably the second most consistent forward on this team, behind Matthews, up to when the All-Star game was announced, and then he became Mr. Willie again. And that's the problem. It's like you cannot depend on this guy to be consistent. Now, if they put him on the market, he will get value back because teams need scoring. But, I'm just saying, if this team does not go where it needs to go, they will have to make changes. And if the changes are not Dubas, and by the way, if it is Dubas and they bring in another general manager, what do you think his first move is going to be? Probably trading William Nylander.
Right.
So it's either one or the other. But I'm just saying, and to the point of improving other aspects of this team. So last night, and a couple games over the last couple weeks, they've really sort of just, I've seen some inconsistency, especially with the second line. Tavares has not played well. He's started to pick up of late. Nylander has not done well. And then that debacle at the Heritage Classic last Sunday, we didn't get a chance to do, as usual. Again, Sabres Game 7 Stanley Cup, Leafs preseason game. That's the way those teams play against each other. And you have Austin Matthews getting frustrated because the referees are not calling penalties, and he cross-checks Rasmus Dahlin across the neck. And then Dylan Cousins takes a run at him, and the only guy who comes to his support is Michael Bunting. When I talk about problems with this team and pushback being one of them, and last night against Nashville, they basically ran him out of the Bridgestone Arena because I think they out-hit him 6,000-2. This is the thing. You're playing against teams in the East, like Tampa, like Florida, like Boston, that can play physically, that can play with offense. They don't have as good an offense as the Leafs. The Leafs are probably more creative. The only team that maybe is more creative than them is Tampa. But you have to be able to play both types of games. Mm-hmm. And really, the Leafs have shown me, Kyle Clifford and Wayne Simmons sticking up for somebody is not. You need toughness and size and grit and sandpaper throughout your lineup. And when Austin Matthews has to do it for himself, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. You saw that comment, tie block. At least Nylander shows up in the playoffs. One playoff, man.
He showed up for one playoff.
I know. Like, come on, that narrative is out of bounds, right? We don't know if he's
And
going
I'm
to
not,
do it again. He
yeah.
may. You know what, Ty? You need the entire team to do it, right? So, let's hope Nylander finishes this season strong, gets into the playoffs, and for his own sake, for his own legacy with this organization, have another amazing playoff, and hopefully the rest of the organization can do it too. And we'll see. The thing is, Mike, based on where we're at, based on the amount of goals this team gives up, the lack of physicality, the lack of playoff preparedness that we're seeing right now, and just the issue with the goaltending, the question marks on defense, right? I just don't know if making changes for the sake of making changes in hopes of catching lightning in a bottle in the playoffs is the right thing to do. There's going to have to be some serious talks between Kyle Dubas and the brass over the next hours to decide whether Dubas is going to be given enough rope to try and take another shot at this in a more thorough fashion, where he can move a guy like William Nylander for players who can come back in and help change the complexion of the team, help it change its philosophy to one that's a little bit more aggressive, more defensive minded, because obviously Nylander's a guy who can be moved out for other pieces based on his movable contract, right? Mike, it's just, I think we have to face it. If this team as is goes through and does something in the playoffs, it'll be because it's a fluke, and because other teams have lost their nerve in a major point, in the same way the Leafs have lost their nerves in seasons past. Other than that, I just don't know if it's prudent or if it makes sense to try and overhaul this team in a jiffy to make a couple of strides in the playoffs when we're looking at the bigger picture. And there's not a lot in that picture that that allows the Leafs to identify itself as a major competitor and a major contender for anything of significance this season. And that just has to be faced. That has to be reconciled, and that has to be dealt with. I just don't feel like the next 24 hours gives the Kyle Dubas or whomever enough time to deal with it thoroughly and properly. So I think we're just going to have some fun with this group the way it is,
Well,
maybe with some minor alterations, and see what it brings us, and then look to the summer and say, at least we're a full season now removed from the debacle against Montreal, and who knows what they end up doing in this run of the playoffs ahead, and then make some serious changes, and then get on the knees, the collective knees of the organization, and beg number 34 to give this group, this community, this environment an extended chance to really make some hay in the right way. A few more points and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's not going to be a major overhaul. There's not, and if that happens, that's going to happen in the summer. What we're talking about probably before the deadline. Look at there was a sound of resignation in the voice of Travis Dermott last night that he played his last game as a Leaf. And I have nothing against Travis Dermott. He just really hasn't panned out to be the player that I think a lot of people thought he was going to be when he was drafted in 2015. And when he played for the Erie Otters and really, was with McDavid and a number of those players, and had some good years with the Marlies, but never became more of a two-way player, offensive player. He had the tools, he could skate, but he may be in need of just like a change of scenery and
right
someplace else. So, the Leafs need operating room in terms of making additions before the deadline. So they probably have something lined up where Dermott gets moved out for a mid round draft pick or something of that nature. Because they only have 3 picks coming into the next the draft in Montreal. So that's probably the first move you'll see. Maybe that happens today. Maybe that happens early tomorrow morning. I don't know in terms of the goaltending situation. The one thing that has to be concerning, you have Campbell out and he's skating and he's going to come back. But we don't know how serious this injury is, and we know Campbell has had injury problems in the past. So, unless you're convinced that Eric Shalgren is the next Henrik Lundqvist, and now Joseph Wall is out with the Marlies.
Mm-hmm.
You need depth in your in your organization. And I don't think that they really want to depend on Michael Hutchinson going down the stretch. So maybe that means you're in the market for a veteran rental goaltender, Craig Anderson or Anton Forsberg or something like that. But who's going to be the guy in the playoffs if he's healthy? It's going to be Jack Campbell. So that's where the goaltending is. The indicator from Darren Drager that the Leafs had talked to the Blackhawks about Hagel, who has 2 more years at $1.5 million, and Marc-Andre Fleury, but that had not gotten to the point of asking Fleury whether he would go to Toronto. Shows that they are concerned about the goaltending situation, but whether any options other than Fleury are out there and they think that are an upgrade, I don't think so. So I don't think you're going to see a goaltending move unless it's just a very minor move. I do think that they're going to try to be in on Giordano, and if he doesn't go someplace else, and remember, he has some control over where he wants to go. I believe he has a modified no trade clause. So, he might want to, the indicators are he wants to play for Toronto. He wants to play for a couple other teams. And if that is the case, that might mitigate the amount that Seattle can get back. That might be a deal that happens later on in the day on Monday. But also out there, and everybody seems to be saying that they're looking for a depth. They're looking for depth at forward. Guys like Tyler Mott have been out there. I really don't know how much that moves the needle, but I do think that they want some depth. And last night, Andre Kasha got hit at center ice by Matt Duchene and staggered to the bench, and he's had a history of concussion problems. So, and I don't know the rules of how quickly a player can be put on LTIR, but if he has a notable concussion history, and that would be a loss for this team because he's played really well for them. But if he's concussed again, then they're probably going to need that depth forward, and they're probably going to move Kasha onto LTIR. So Dubas could be busy, but in terms of like massive impact move, the only name I see them going after is Giordano.
OG's converts. If Mark Giordano is a Maple Leaf by this time on Monday, is that enough for you in this moment? I'm sure in general, you'd feel like it's a disappointment because we all want the Leafs to do better. We all want them to be amongst the true contenders in this league. But based on what we know and what we see and the way this team is taking shape, should we really be that disappointed? I mean, it is what it is, right? I think Brad Tyndall made the comment here. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Roll the dice. Maybe they get lucky in round 1. Exactly. Maybe they get lucky. The Leafs have had a lot of things, and they haven't had a lot of things. One of the things the Leafs have been without historically in the playoffs is luck.
I was like, when was the last time they got lucky in the playoffs? When?
92
99. I'd say
99.
Yeah, when Cujo, first year of Cujo, when they got to the conference finals and lost to Buffalo.
Right.
They got out goaltended by Hasek, but they beat, I think it was Philadelphia and then Pittsburgh.
Right.
The Danny Markov salute. So maybe
Yeah.
they got fortunate at that point. 0-2 without Sundin, they get past the Islanders, they get past Ottawa, and then lose to Carolina. And you could say that they got lucky because they were without their best player. But if you ask me, addition by subtraction when it came to Matt Sundin,
Giordano and Braun, and I'm happy. Just a couple of guys back there, some help.
yeah, but
Would you be happy with that, Mike? And just at least
I think
make you content for the time being, because we know that contentment
yeah,
erodes,
about 2 seconds.
by the minute.
I think one. I don't think two.
Okay.
I think they need to play their kids in the playoffs. And
Okay.
if they don't play well, then they're not ready. But I think Sandin and Liljegren and Labushkin's not a kid, but I think they need to play their young players in the playoffs and let you can bring in all the veterans you want, and then you lose to Tampa and Florida. And what's the first thing you ask next year? Well, are Sandin and Liljegren ready? Well, we need to find out if they're ready. And I think at times they've looked really good, and at times playing together on the bottom pairing, Sandin and Liljegren have been really good. You're bringing in a veteran basically because you're not sure about Jake Muzzin's health, and because overall, if you bring in a Giordano, he's in your top 4 mix, and you increase the depth of your defense, and you need defensive depth in the playoffs.
Yeah. See, this, I know it's a long shot, but this could be the start of when this group of Maple Leafs makes its official playoff debut with some luck and a series win and moving forward. Or this could be the beginning of the end of an era that has been led by Kyle Dubas, and that has been, built with guys like Nylander contracts and Tavares and Matthews, Marner, and just with Sheldon Keefe as the guy taking over for Mike Babcock. The beginning of the end for this philosophy, this style that has obviously been governed by Brendan Shanahan. I think it's the latter, and this offseason is going to bring with it some not only changes in the way this team is composed and put together, but changes amongst the personnel who is going to be tasked with doing that. But if I'm wrong, and Nylander has another fantastic playoff, and he's the guy, and all of a sudden all of these players that we are so skeptical about find their way, and the opposition loses its nerve. The Leafs could use a playoff win in its tool belt, in its trophy case, just for no other reason than it's a morale boost for fans, and Leafs at least tells the rest of the league that there is some capability here. But there's only one way to find out: it's to get there, and the Leafs have to get to the playoffs in a respectable, manageable position, and by hook or by crook, and with the weight of the world on its shoulders, do something. So let's take it one step at a time. We have 24 hours between now and the end of the trade deadline. Kyle Dubas, the floor, the floor is yours, and this won't be the only time. Mike, anything else you want to add, and then we can get on, because I know you have some other podcasts to do.
Yeah, in the chat somebody said, why do you think Dubas isn't putting Muzzin on LTIR? Because he has had 2 concussions. Yes, but he's skating now. They think he's going to be ready well in advance of the playoffs. So they can't really justify. It's not like Nikita Kucherov, where he was ready to come back maybe 3 weeks before the playoffs. You're talking about 5-6 weeks before the playoffs. So there's no way that they can justify. If he's healthy, he's going to play. And then they think that popping him in on April 29th right before the playoffs is going to work. So that's the reason why. But Kasha, like I mentioned, he's got a history of concussions, and he was hurt last night. And we all hope, I guess, he was okay in the locker room, but we're talking about concussion issues, and we're talking about a player who has had serious ones where he's missed a season, almost an entire season. So I'm not hoping that that's the case, but I think that with where they're situated, they may have to put him on LTIR and take advantage of the $1.25 million that he signed for and bring in somebody, and hopefully he's back before the playoffs. But he could be skating in practice tomorrow, so who knows? We'll see. But right now, there's a lot of uncertainty with this team. There's a lot of uncertainty in goal, uncertainty on the blue line, uncertainty of forward. The key word is uncertainty,
right?
And we'll see what Kyle Dubas does to address that uncertainty in the next 24 hours.
What I am 100% certain of, Mike, is that you and I will do another convo here in the very near future.
Yes.
We'll do our best to react to what happens on Monday and prepare ourselves for what's to come. And we know, Mike, regardless of how the team is playing, who's doing what, there's never a dull moment when it comes to the Leafs Convo. Okay, Michael, have a great day, man. Do your thing. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right. I'll